They found the first body at sunrise, not on the sand, not half buried by a dune. He was sitting upright against a black stone wall that nobody had seen the day before, with both hands wrapped around a brass key the size of a knife. The search team thought he had died from heat. Then they saw the frost on his eyelashes. This happened in the Black Desert, a dead stretch of land where the sand is not yellow, not red, but dark gray, almost ash-colored. Local guides avoided it. Satellite maps showed nothing there except dunes, no ruins, no roads, no water. But that morning, after a sandstorm, a staircase appeared. It went straight down into the earth, and at the bottom, there was a door. The expedition had been in the desert for 9 days. They were not looking for treasure. They were mapping underground water channels, the kind that ancient settlements used to survive in impossible places. The team was small, 6 researchers, 2 local guides, and a photographer named Mara Voss, hired to document the dig. Mara was the one who noticed the wall. At first she thought it was a shadow, a dark line cutting across the side of a dune, but when she walked closer, her boot struck stone. Smooth stone. Polished stone. Too clean to be natural. By noon, the team had cleared enough sand to expose 12 steps. By evening, they had uncovered 40. The staircase was narrow, carved between 2 black walls, and every step sloped slightly downward as if it had been worn by thousands of feet moving in the same direction. But there were no footprints. Not old ones. Not new ones. Nothing had come out. At the bottom of the stairs, the air changed. The heat disappeared first, then the wind, then the sound. Mara wrote in her notes that it felt like standing under a frozen lake. The door was taller than a man and made of dark stone with a brass plate set into the center. The plate showed a symbol, 1 crescent above 3 short vertical lines. One of the guides, Samir, refused to go closer. He said his grandfather had warned him about that mark, not the place, not the door. The mark. According to the old story, the symbol did not mean entrance. It meant keep count. The lead archaeologist laughed at that. He said every culture had warning signs. Curses were just old security systems. Then he touched the brass plate. Something knocked from the other side. 3 slow knocks. Nobody spoke for almost a minute. The archaeologist said it had to be stone settling in the cold. The engineer said pressure shifts could make underground chambers sound alive. Mara kept filming because that was her job. Then the guide, Samir, pointed at the stairs. There were marks on them now, chalk-white marks, 1 on each step. Starting near the door and climbing upward. They had not been there before. The marks looked like counting lines. 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 40. The team argued about leaving. Half wanted to seal the stairway and call the authorities. The others knew what would happen if they left. The storm would return. The sand would cover the site. Someone else would find it later, unprepared. So they made the decision that ruins almost always force people to make. They opened the door. The brass key from the dead man's hands fit perfectly. That was the first impossible thing, because the body had not been there when they arrived. Mara had filmed the base of the stairs less than an hour earlier. Empty wall, empty sand, empty shadow. But the footage now showed something different. In the video, the dead man was already sitting there, watching them work. His eyes were open. Nobody remembered seeing him. The door opened inward without sound. Behind it was a passage barely wide enough for 2 people to stand shoulder to shoulder. The walls were carved with thousands of tiny figures, all walking in the same direction. Not gods, not soldiers, not kings. Ordinary people. Children holding hands. Women carrying baskets, men with tools. Old people bent forward, all of them walking deeper underground, and above every figure was the same symbol, the crescent, the 3 lines, keep count. They entered in a line, first the archaeologist, then the engineer, then Mara with the camera, then 2 assistants, then Samir at the back, whispering prayers under his breath. The passage ran straight for 200 meters before opening into a circular room. There was no dust inside, no insects, no roots, no fallen stones. In the center of the room stood a map carved into a black stone table. It showed the desert above them, the dunes, the dry riverbeds, the mountain ridge to the east. But beneath the surface, the map showed tunnels, hundreds of them, all leading to the same central chamber. The engineer put his hand on the map and went pale. The tunnels were not ancient water channels. They were routes from buried settlements, from vanished villages, from places that had disappeared from history without war, fire, or plague. Every route ended under their feet. That was when the first assistant went missing. His name was Eli. He had been standing near the left wall, photographing the carvings. Mara heard his camera click 3 times. Click, click, click. Then nothing. When they turned, he was gone. Not hiding. Not around the corner. Gone from a round room with 1 entrance and 6 people inside. His camera lay on the floor. The last photo showed the map table from above. But there was a new line on it, a fresh route carved through the stone, running from the expedition camp on the surface down to the chamber. At the end of that new line was a tiny figure, a man holding a camera. Above him was the crescent in 3 lines. Mara checked her own footage. Eli was still visible in the recording, standing by the wall, but in every frame he was facing away from the team, staring into a crack that did not exist anymore. Panic broke the expedition apart. The archaeologist wanted to keep documenting. The engineer wanted to leave immediately. Samir said the door had counted them the moment they touched it. Mara kept filming, but her hands were shaking so badly the image blurred. Then the second knock came, not from the entrance this time, from below. The map table split open. Inside was another staircase, smaller than the first, descending into blue darkness. Cold air rose from it with the smell of wet stone and old smoke. On the underside of the broken table, someone had carved a sentence in a language none of them recognized. The translation app failed. The archaeologist tried 3 ancient scripts before his face changed. He said the sentence was not a warning. It was an instruction. Return what walked out. They found Eli 12 steps down. He was alive, but he had aged. His hair was white. His skin hung loose around his jaw. His fingernails were cracked and black with dirt, as if he had been clawing at stone for years. He looked at Mara and said, "You already left me here." No one understood. Then he began naming things that had not happened yet. He said the engineer would run first. He said Samir would close the wrong door. He said Mara would be the last one with the camera. He said the archaeologist would choose the map over the living. The engineer grabbed Eli by the shoulders and asked where he had been. Eli started crying. He said there was no where, only when. Then the lights went out. Mara's camera kept recording in the dark. The audio caught 7 people breathing. There should have been 6. A voice spoke near the microphone, calm and close. It was Eli's voice, but older. "The door is not buried," it said. "It waits until someone needs an ending. Then it gives them one." When the lights came back, the engineer was gone. On the wall, a new carving showed a man climbing a staircase toward the surface. But the carving was wrong. The man was climbing out into a desert filled with tents, tools, and people who looked exactly like the expedition. Same clothes, same faces, same moment. The engineer had not escaped. He had become the dead man at the entrance, the one holding the key. Samir understood first. The passage was a loop. Every time someone opened the door, the ruin took one person and sent another version back to make sure the next group could enter. The body on the sand was not from the past. It was from a few minutes in the future. The brass key was not an artifact. It was bait. The archaeologist still refused to leave the map. He said if they could document the mechanism, they could prove the greatest discovery in human history. Samir hit him with a lantern. Not hard enough to kill him, hard enough to stop him. Then he dragged Mara toward the passage. Behind them, the lower staircase filled with voices. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all whispering in different languages, all counting. 1, 2, 3. They reached the first door with only one lantern left. The chalk marks on the stairs had changed. There were no longer 40. There were 41. Samir pushed Mara through the doorway and told her not to look back. Of course she looked back. He was standing on the threshold with the brass key in his hand. Behind him, the archaeologist was rising from the floor, smiling like he had finally understood the joke. Samir closed the door from the inside. The knocks came immediately. 3 slow knocks. Mara climbed the stairs alone. At the top, the desert wind hit her face like fire. The sun was rising again. Though it had been afternoon when they went down, the camp was gone. No tents, no tools, no footprints, only her camera, still recording. The official report said Mara Voss was found wandering near the edge of the Black Desert 3 days later, dehydrated, sunburned, carrying a camera with 9 hours of corrupted footage. Most of the video showed static, but the last clean frame became famous among the investigators who saw it before the file was sealed. It showed the black staircase from above. At the bottom stood a man with white hair holding a brass key. Not Samir, not Eli, the archaeologist. And behind him, carved into the wall, were 42 white marks. Mara never spoke publicly about what happened, but years later, when she was dying, she gave one instruction to her daughter. If a storm ever uncovers black stone in the desert, do not photograph it. Do not touch the door. Do not count the steps. And if you hear 3 knocks from under the sand, run before you understand why.